Good morning, everyone. This is Kathy Mason from MasonWorks Marketing here on Conscious Business Zone with my friend Kelvin Chen. How are you, Kelvin?
Hey, great to see you again, Kathy.
Yes, I'm so glad you're here. Thank you for answering the call because I think what you offer and your worldview is the perfect thing, at least for my audience, to get through this chaos that we're in. Because everyone, Kelvin started out, he's a Renaissance man. Let me start with that. He does as many things as I do, and I do a lot. But it's like, what's he doing now? Because he teaches tons of classes and he writes books and he's just an amazing man. Anyway, Kelvin started, at least as far as the history I know, you started by teaching TM, and you were one of the first and most foremost transcendental meditation teachers in the U.S. Is that correct?
Yeah, 1970. Yeah.
Wow. So I think, and do you still practice it?
So I learned in 1970 when I was 19 years old, and I was very stressed out. And it's interesting because you and I have had all these conversations about our various spiritual we'll call it spiritual pursuits and so forth. But when I learned meditation, that's not why I learned. I learned because I was stressed out. I was highly anxious. College student, 19 years old. I was at Dartmouth College, and I was freaking out. I was like, am I going to make it through? I'm going to flunk out. Anyway, so seriously. And so I learned to meditate, and I learned TM, as you said, Transcendental Meditation. And I studied personally with Maharishi Mahesh Yogi in 1971 and 1973. Wow. And I was an international leader in his organization for about 10 years. So I traveled around the world, and I taught the first meditation courses in the history of West Point, military academy in New York, and then in Korea in the U.S. Army, U.S. Air Force, up on the DMZ, all over the place. And they went off in a different direction, so I went in this direction. And I continue to teach meditation. I call it turning within, but I've removed all the cultural trappings from the teaching, and I've made it even easier.
Oh, good. Okay. Well, everyone I know that has done TM or meditation practice like that, which is a lot more structured than most people's meditation practice, everyone that I know has found incredible capacity to focus and be a very productive person. So I can see why you're so amazing.
The key is learning how to focus in waking state without focusing in meditation. Exactly. That's the key. That's where the rubber meets the road. And so most people are probably involved in a meditation process involves focusing on the breath or focusing on a mandala or a mantra, or controlling or focusing the mind in some way, or clearing the mind of thoughts or trying to relax. All of that is the opposite of the way that I teach the meditation.
Oh, okay. Yeah. Now I'm curious. Now I am really curious. So, okay. So your journey goes from, you are a teacher of all different aspects. Some of it is stress release. Some of it is releasing the fear of death.
Yes.
So where would you like to start here to familiarize the audience with you as a resource? Because I see that they could start anywhere with you and end up in an improved state of mind. So
right.
What would
I think I would say that I take everybody from wherever they are and I help them get to where they want to be. Right. And so that might mean that somebody comes to me with high anxiety. So I have a large group of clients who are very high anxiety, and the 4 words that they find me on the internet, and then they read the testimonials on my website and so forth. And because I'm one of the top Google search results for anxiety or high anxiety and meditation and anxiety and so forth. And the 4 words I hear often from students now around 48 countries around the world is, "You're my last hope."
Oh gosh,
It's
that's sad.
really, I know, and it's so they're like I was when I was 19 years old. I was desperate, and they've tried this, and this, and this, and they've tried the traditional medical routes. They've tried various alternatives. They've tried various kinds of meditation. Some of them have been meditating for 10, 15, 20, 30, 40, 50 years, so one of them, and then they find me. And it's not that they don't get benefit from some of the things that they're doing. And obviously, why would you meditate for 40 years and
Right.
not get benefit from it? But then they learn what I teach, and it's so different from what they're used to. It just takes them to a different place, regardless of where their anxiety, or sometimes people just come to me because they might be sick, they may be physically ill, and they want to accelerate their healing, or they just have spiritual pursuits and they want to open. I have a lot of parents who've tragically lost their children, and
Right.
they come to me and they want to communicate with their children on the other side, or other loved ones and so forth. And the best thing to do, it can do many different approaches to that. But I think the fundamental missing link is connecting with oneself first and expanding one's conscious capacity for mental experience, which is what I teach does.
Yeah.
And then that increases probabilities, likelihoods that they could connect. So people come to me for all different reasons. They have different belief systems. Like you said, I help people with overcoming the fear of death is one of my specialties. And I've been doing it for about 35 years, since my mom died. And I help people, doesn't matter what their beliefs about death are. They could believe in the science belief that there's no afterlife, and I can help them get over their fear. Or they may have belief in reincarnation or anything in between. But I help them get over their fears. That's the thing, regardless of what their belief system is.
And did you do that because you had to get over your fears of death? Is that partially what took you on this road?
I didn't have fears about death and dying because my reincarnation memory started opening up spontaneously in 1977.
Wow.
So,
Long
so
time ago.
my memories go back 6,000 years. A couple dozen lifetimes is what I have memories of. As you and I have talked offline, we've probably had a lot more lifetimes of that. But I have memories from a couple dozen, and they go back 6,000 years, and I'm sure I've been around longer than 6,000 years, but my memories go back 6,000 years. So I haven't had any fears about personally my death and dying. And, I've had communication spontaneously started happening with the other side, angels, archangels, and then dead people. I knew dead people. I didn't know beings who've never been human before, who are on the other side,
Me too.
in 1986. So my fears, were more curiosities, I guess I would call them.
Cool.
It kind of inspired by these different experiences that I didn't even really believe in before I had them. So I was very skeptical when I first had any of those experiences. But my death and dying interest happened because of my mom's tragic and sudden death. And I was fairly young, and she was like young, in her 50s, and vibrant and everything. And that's really what catapulted me into helping people that way.
Yes, my father died when I was 21, and he was pretty much dead 4 years before. He barely made it to that time. And he was the youngest of 8, and all of them died. It was like Aunt so-and-so's gone, Uncle so-and-so's gone. So I ended up in college starting to read reincarnation books, all sorts of stuff, because I couldn't figure out how you dealt with it. And I found myself, I would always, like if I was going for a trip, I'd try to get everything done in case I died.
Mm.
I don't know if you've ever had that kind of thing. It's like, well, I've got to make it neat and tidy in case I'm not coming back here. Don't want to leave a mess for someone else. So, yeah, no, I think that it's interesting how death shows up. But then when you're around the near-death experiencers and some of the research that's been done, you just get such a different viewpoint of it. In fact, most of the time it activates these tremendous gifts, like what your work and your experience with your mother activated more gifts for you.
Yeah, it's interesting because when I started helping people after my mom died, combine that with some of my past life memories and so forth that had started opening up about 5-6 years earlier. I started remembering that I've been helping people with death and dying for thousands of years. So it's like around 4,000 years is what my memory is, like from ancient Egypt and so forth, and then a couple thousand years ago again in the Middle East, etc., in Judea and so forth. So it's been something that I've been familiar with helping people with on a deep level, but hadn't remembered as Kelvin Chin until more recently for me, 50 years ago, recently in terms of 6,000 years. But it's like
Doing
recent,
the math.
do the math as compared to what I say, like recent as compared to what. But yeah, and interesting. I had an NDE and I was 21 years old,
Oh,
almost drowned. But my NDE was really. I'm going to talk about that at the IONS workshop that I'm teaching. My NDE was unusual. It wasn't your classic. In my first book here. This is my first book, Overcoming the Fear of Death.
yes.
You have this one. I got to send you my new one. Is this one?
I can't wait.
I got to send you the copy of my new one.
Okay, I do want to hear about that. Why you did that book?
But the new one is Marcus Aurelius updated,
I know.
21st Century Meditations on Living Life, and then my first one is Overcoming the Fear of Death. But in the first one, I talk about NDEs and explicitly talk about NDEs and how they fit in to our understanding about death and dying, or can fit in. In basically, I'm giving people data points. I'm not here to change people's beliefs. The 4 beliefs I talk about in here are not religious or cultural beliefs. They underlie all the religious and cultural beliefs. So, but the NDEs I talk about, there are classic NDEs that you and I know about. Mine was very different, and the reason it was very different, I realized in retrospect after like decades later, thinking about it. It was because I'd been meditating for 2 years before I had my NDE. And I mean this, Kathy, I think that in retrospect, had I not been meditating, I think my physical, biological body would have drowned. I think I would have died in the physical sense in that experience, because when I started going down in the ocean, it was in the ocean off of San Diego. I got pulled up by a rip current really fast, very far out all of a sudden. And I didn't even know what a rip was. But when I started going down, I see the water going, like, the water level going away. And then I left my body for a split second. But I was not unfamiliar with the separation of mind and body, because I've been meditating for 2 years. I'd already been with Maharishi for like a month intense, all day, every day, like for a month, like in 1971. That was a year before. That was the summer before the summer I had this drowning, almost drowning. And so I was steeped in the steeped in the sense of familiar with the experience of my mind being separate from my body. So when my mind left, it wasn't like most people who've never had that experience.
Right. It wasn't shocking.
NDE, they go, whoa, and they're in this kind of like, this almost blissful, like this, like, whoa, I feel so free now. I'd had that like every day for like 2 years. So if I had been in that whoa state, the body's still going down. By the time I kind of realized what's going on, and that I could go back into my body, I probably would have been 20, 30 feet down, seriously, and I would not have been able to get back up. But I popped back into my body, realizing what had happened, and I struggled the 4 feet or whatever it was to get to the surface because I was exhausted. That's why I was going down in the first place. And I just decided, I take your time. All I remember, that's the thought I remember, is just don't rush, because I was rushing, I was panicking, and I was trying to swim in, and I got so exhausted swimming against the rip current that I started going down. But the meditation saved my life.
Yes. Wow. So
Yeah.
everything's in perfect in divine order. That's the way I look at it.
Yeah.
I think it's interesting because there's so many people like me that are out there that are also really interested in all of this, that have been out of their body most of their lives.
Mm.
Somehow that they didn't get the memo that the party's inside the suit.
Yeah.
And so I think either that, or they had childhood trauma, or you look at the PTSD people. A lot of people, their soul's barely connected to their body, and that's what I think this whole period of time is, that people are reconnecting. The opportunity now in 2021 and beyond is to really embody and embrace the consciousness that can fill this vessel and work from here. And that's what you do. You naturally do that.
Yeah.
And that's so. Do you help other people do that as well?
Do which part?
Embody and basically, well, first of all, you're validating and helping, shepherding people to a new understanding. That's the
Yeah.
way I see what you do. So it's not like little grasshopper and you're the professor and they're
Right.
the lowly student. It's not like that. You're more like a shepherd,
Yes.
the guru, what do you call it, Sherpa, the
Yeah.
guide.
Yeah.
But do you find that that's part of it, is integrating soul, body?
Yes. Absolutely. Yes. So first of all, yeah, I'm a Sherpa. That's a great thing. That's a great way of saying. I never thought about it that way. But I'm a teacher. I'm not a guru. I don't want followers. I want to empower people to think and live for themselves. So I give them tools and perspectives and approaches. That's what I do in my books. It's all about that. It's about giving people perspectives and tools, because we're all on an eternal journey individually, each of us. My experience tells me that. And we're all figuring it out, and nobody's got it figured out, and everybody is figuring it out, and everybody is at whatever place they are at in the figuring it out. And we continually are figuring. Look at, I tell people, I'm in an eternal journey figuring myself out. How can I judge other people
Right.
where they're at when I can't? I'm figuring myself out for eternity. I am my own set of work. I got my own work done. I help people, but hey, you got to do your own work, and then I'll help you. But I am not here to judge you. I am here to help move you forward. But
Right.
the embodiment thing is huge. What you just said, because everything that I do and with the way I teach brings the person more into the continual present. I call it the continual present, because the present is always changing.
Right.
President's like, I just said that. It's like, whoop, you just missed it. It was like the continual right. What? You missed the present. It's like you missed it again. There's like the continual present. and that's the thing, is where are we now? We have physical biological bodies. Yes, there exists an afterlife. Yes, that we have energetic. We're energetic. We're energy beings. You could even see an energy body. And I've had visitations from friends and old loved ones and so forth, who I've seen their energy body, not their physical body. Their physical, we could call it energetically physical body, not their biologically physical body. But so that exists, but we are here now. And so let's enjoy everything that is involved in having a body that has salivary glands that can enjoy the taste of food.
Right.
That enjoys the physicality of working out and sweating and all of that we don't have on the other side. That's the reality. Now we can do all kinds of stuff on the other side. We can go for a run. We can go for a jog. We can hike up a mountain.
Right.
We can sort of feel like we're sweating, but we don't really, because we don't have a biological body with fluids in it.
Right.
We can do all kinds of things in this biological body, and people need to embrace that. It's not about, it's going to be great once I get rid of this shell, this vehicle.
Well,
enjoy the shell. We've chosen to be here.
yes.
That's the thing.
In fact, I think, and the reason I'm so excited to introduce you to this audience is I really feel that you've hit the nail on the head. That this is, I mean, we stood in line to get these bodies to be here right now during
Right.
this huge time of change. And it's an awareness, and it's not a race to see who's more ascended or any of that stuff. It's about the idea of how you embrace change and how you can stay calm in chaos. Because right now we are in this high contrast time, which I call fourth dimension. And it's like, like this, and trying to stay there with all of this. It's interesting. You become the observer, but you fall out and then you go back in. And then and so what you're teaching, a lot of what you're modeling and teaching is to how to, when you fall out of
Right.
that 0 point state, that
It's
calm,
balance.
that
It's
balance.
about balance. It's about balance. Life is about balance, whether we're talking physical, mental, emotional, spiritually, energetically, does not matter. It's all about balance. And nobody is perfectly balanced all the time.
Right.
We're adjusting. Even somebody who is measured by our traditional scientific medical measurements as being perfectly healthy, there's a range, and we call that normal. There's a range of what's normal. Oh, normal and healthy. It's balance. Life is always about balance, and that's what I teach. And I teach people how to be balanced, but not in a mental manipulation way. That's the other thing. It's like very often it's I call it content oriented approach. There's nothing wrong with content. There's nothing wrong with changing the deck chairs that are on the deck of the ocean liner. But what I teach is that plus the missing link, which is how can we make the deck bigger? So can we make the deck bigger so that the deck chairs can be rearranged more easily?
Beautiful.
And we can get rid of the broken deck chairs. Okay, fine. That's usually the approach that most people take. Get rid of the broken deck chairs, rearrange the deck chairs, the thoughts, the emotions, rearrange them. That's okay. It's not nothing, but it's partial. And so if we don't expand our capacity for mental experience, then we are limited forever. And so that's why I've been teaching meditation for 48 years now. I've been teaching meditation to thousands of people. And so
I was a mere babe when you started. So how do you connect? Because so much of this, I know you are very heart-centered. How do you connect that expanding your mindset, or we're talking about a lot of what I've seen you do is stress release and give people a different worldview. And so how do you get them from here to their heart?
So I think it's automatic. You see, I don't think of the mind and the heart as disconnected.
Ah.
I think that people can view it as disconnected and can also experience it as disconnected. But I think fundamentally we are a conscious being with a lot of different energy flowing this way and that way, and you can articulate it. And I understand it makes a chart look good. And it makes a test exam on an exam easier, But we're not so compartmentalized as some of the literature would lead us to believe experientially. To me, emotions and thoughts are all part of our mental experience. We don't bifurcate them. Oh, I'm having an emotion now. Oh, I'm thinking now. Oh, I'm that. No, we embody we experience. We are experiencers of experience, and those are, we could articulate them. And I do sometimes talk about emotional patterns and over. And there are when I talk about emotional patterns, I'm talking about something that kind of really underlies our thinking, but it's connected to our thinking. So it's not disconnected,
I see.
but it underlies it. In the emotional patterns tend to be what I would call the knee jerk, the default that
Triggers.
that triggers certain thought patterns, and then the thoughts affect our behavior affect our actions, and so forth. So I think we can talk about that, and I think that is true, but I think it's a flow. It's not like even trifurcated, or into 4 separate things, even, or 3-4 separate things there when I just, it's all connected. It's a flow. And so when I talk about in my teaching and helping people with that, I don't separate their emotions. Let's look at your emotions. Let's look at your thoughts about that. Now, sometimes we do, and it's helpful. But generally, my teaching is that our emotions and our thoughts, we don't need to bifurcate them all the time.
I understand.
Right?
Right. So do you feel that, okay, I got a couple questions for that. Do you feel that a lot of those those repetitive emotional thoughts are karmic?
They can be, yeah. But let me just finish. So I do think it's good to look at our desires, which is people see emotions. So I talk about desires, and people very often connect desires and emotions, and I can see how they can be connected. But desires are our motivators for our thinking. So I think there is that. I don't want to make it sound like our emotions and our thoughts are totally the same and so forth. But there's a flow between the two, and there's a connection. I don't like the disconnect that often people talk about mind and heart and da 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 da. And so to your question is, when I work with people, what I find is that they automatically get the connection in the way that you're talking about between mind and heart is an automatic thing when I work with them. Okay. So let's come back to what was your question again?
The karma, whether this is partially karmic, because it appears that, well, if you considered us like a computer, and we have these programs running, and they cause the triggers that cause action, inaction, whatever the stressor would be. And so a lot of times it seems like that may have been a desire for your soul to learn in this lifetime, versus sometimes it's from an environmental.
Sure. So the short answer is that can happen from lifetime to lifetime. But those are based on desires that we have. So when people use the word karma, I like to define it the way I think about it. Karma just means action. In Sanskrit, it just means action.
Oh, it does? Oh, okay.
That's all it means, is actions. But people very often will use the word karma to mean, oh, there's a consequence and this and that. And I'm okay with that. That's okay too. But what I'm not okay with is the belief, because my experience on the other side is that this does not exist. There's not some cosmic accounting system that's saying, oh, keeping track. There's not like a credits and debits. Those of you who are listening out there who have any accounting background, I took an accounting class in law school when I was in law school, but it's not credits and debits. There's no system. There's no person. There's no panel of judges, and there's no cosmic, system that's keeping track of that stuff, other than you and the people who you've maybe positively or negatively affected. They're keeping track. So are there consequences? Yes. So, I mean, people remember from lifetime to lifetime, and I mean that seriously. They remember good stuff and they remember bad stuff from lifetime to lifetime that you may have done to them, and you remember that too. So can you have a desire, like you said, to come back in and kind of rectify things and so forth? Yes, you could do that.
Wow. So when you help people with stress, because I want to go back to that, because I really think that this audience is either dealing with stress, because a lot of this audience is a small business owner, they're a servant leader, they are spending a lot of their time taking care of their employees as well as their customers, because they are conscious. They want the team to succeed, not just themselves. It's not just about money, although money is good, and money's flow if you have a good team.
Yes.
So the two things that I'm seeing in the marketplace is fear and this stress. And you just did, or you're doing a class on stress. So could you talk about that a little bit for us?
Sure. So for just as a background, so I've had small businesses myself. I've run small businesses, medium-sized businesses, and large regional operations for international organizations. So I've you talk about Renaissance guy, me.
Yes,
I've
sure.
done all of that in addition to teaching meditation on the side, full-time in the 70s, full-time for about the last 8 years now, again through my nonprofits, but in between, on the side, while I was doing all the business stuff, trying to raise a family of 2 kids. So the key is, whenever I was running a team, whether I had a team of, half a dozen people, or if I had a team of a dozen people or 50 people or 600 people on my team, I always looked at myself. I'm kind of like a caregiver in a sense, right? To use the language in this kind of parlance of the world that we're in, and the team. I'm the leader and the caregiver of the team. I want to make sure the team's working properly because our business is going to function a lot better, much more successfully. And so, but the key is a key element that many people forget. They bring in facilitator. Oh, we'll teach the team this new skill and blah blah blah. This is great. How about the team leader?
Right.
That's the thing. Need to take care of the team leader. The team leader needs to take care of the team leader. And so, as the caregiver of the team, basically. And so that's a key message. And so when I'm working with people, whether it's in an organization, like I'm working with New Jersey, for example, I'm talking to them about one of the state groups with 90 people in their organization. And I'm going to come in and do some teaching with them and so forth. But the team leader recognized, you see that, and the team leaders has already taken one of my classes and so forth and so on. So it really is important for the leader to be taking care of him or herself, obviously, in order to really function as efficiently and effectively as possible. But that's
I think, these are high functioning people that are doing all of this, but they may need some support or new tools and techniques in order to do it, because this is a roller coaster we're on a little bit. Each day, I'm not following all the bad news, but if you've got that much fear that's going through because of the news and because of the global consciousness, if you're sensitive at all, that global consciousness is powerful, and you have to clear it.
So the way I work with that is, let's define fear first.
Okay.
Fear is the emotion caused by the anticipation of unhappiness. The emotion caused by the anticipation of unhappiness. So what can we do to reduce our fears? Well, one of the things we can do is, how can we reduce our anticipation of unhappiness? How can we do that? We can increase our strength within ourselves. We go within. That's why I call the meditation technique, I call it turning within. But all of the work that I do is a form of turning within. Even my books, that are obviously books, they're written material. Yeah. And then as an audio book, I do the audio book, the narration of the first book, and there's ebooks and so forth. But there's written material. And so they're turning within still. The ideas are turning within. So we strengthen ourselves from within. Either it's content oriented or experientially through the meditation.
Perfect.
We strengthen ourselves from within. And what does that do? Couple of things. Number one, it's going to balance out our cortisol and adrenaline and our lactic acid and our copper levels and everything else, 40 to 60 other different hormones and chemicals that are out of whack because the fight or flight gets turned on too much, right? When we get anxious, we're fearful, the fight or flight turns on. Well, that imbalances our brain and our blood chemistry. So we need to balance that. So I know that what I teach does that because I was a test subject in the first medical studies done in the United States on meditation in 1971, 1972. It was published in the Journal of American Medical Association. And for if anybody's listening in the UK, it was published in the Lancet and so forth. It was a cover story, Scientific American magazine. And they took blood samples before, during, and after, and you could see, cortisol, lactic acid. Those are the ones I remember. I can't remember what else they were measuring, but they just, look at that. It balanced out. So that's one part of the getting rid of the fear and the anxiety, is the balancing of the chemistry. The other is, I've alluded to this earlier, is expanding the conscious capacity of the mind. Now, what does that mean? It sounds so abstract. Here's an analogy that I've borrowed from a psychology professor who was at the University of Houston in Texas, in the United States, teaching a psychology class to one of my students who shared this with me. One of my meditation students was a PhD candidate in this professor's class. And the professor said, most of you students here, you incorrectly think your mind is very limited. And he said, think of the biggest football stadium, Wembley in London, or in his case, the Houston Astrodome in Houston, Texas, okay, which was a big deal because it was enclosed. It had a roof. You could air condition it in Houston, Texas. People don't know. Very, very humid, hot and humid. Right. Yeah. Big deal. 1965, I think. And he said, it was built. He said, imagine yourself in there alone at night. There's nobody in there. It's pitch black. And there's this little 8-inch plastic bucket, like 16 centimeter, little 8-inch plastic bucket sitting in the middle of the football field. You can hardly see it because, it's like 90,000 seats and you're way up in the stadium and you can just barely see it. But there's this little desk lamp over it. That's why you can see it. And there's about 10 ping pong balls bouncing in and out of it. That's like your thoughts and emotions, he said. You incorrectly think, you students, all of you students in this room here, you incorrectly think that's your mind. No, that's part of your mind. But your mind is this huge football stadium. You just don't know because the lights aren't turned on. That's where he ended it. And now I've taken his analogy and I said, that's what I teach people to do. Turn the light switches off.
Perfect. And then what results do you see people are they quantum high achievers after they have this experience?
So it depends. It depends on this daily. It's a daily thing, 10 to 15 minutes each time, twice a day. It depends on the person, where they're at. Like when I first learned, I was high anxiety. So the first thing that I noticed that my anxiety started to dissipate little by little. It wasn't overnight. It was like gradual, little by little, gradually dissipate less and less. Wow, I think I can make it through. I'm not going to flunk out. So like that was a quantum leap for me. What's quantum? You know what I mean? Yeah. For me, as compared to what? As compared to before I started, that was a quantum leap. And then my memory started improving and so forth. But then, later, I hit past life memories. I start communicating with the other side down the road. That was like, 15 years after meditating. It's just spontaneous without taking any workshops or not even believing in it. Yeah. But each person's different. I just did an overcoming anxiety panel. It's on my YouTube channel. People should check out my YouTube
That's
channel.
it. I was hoping you'd bring that up.
I did an overcoming anxiety panel with 3 of my students who came to me because they were desperate. Brittany and Jeremy and Walker, and they have different stories, and I had them tell the stories. It's on I did it twice in the last week, and both of the recordings are on my YouTube channel, and they were very candid and open and transparent about their anxieties, and they're different. And some of them had fear of death anxieties, and they talk about how they worked with me and they all learned the meditation technique and how it affected them eventually getting over their anxiety over some period of time. It's gone. And they don't even know when it left, because it's like you don't know what you don't know.
Right.
And so at some point, it's just like, whoa, I haven't had that. It's like a memory that they've had that was intense for some of them for 20, 30 years.
Wow. That's so cool.
Yeah.
That's so cool. And that's where I'm so glad that you brought that up, because I wanted people to know that if they are struggling with these times and don't really have a practice, don't have it, it's you just it's not just being validated about what you're seeing or what you're hearing, but it's a balancing act so that you can function in this world and find joy. It's
Yes.
I mean, because the other, being in high anxiety, is like the opposite of
Exactly.
high functioning joy.
Exactly. Yeah. Let me tell you a quick story. So
Good.
on this December 24th, 2017, so Christmas Eve,
Okay.
this woman found me on the internet. She
Oh,
calls me up
sad.
and she was desperate. And she had, she was on benzodiazepines. People who have high anxiety know what those are. Ativan and various, these benzodiazepines, these benzos. And she was trying to get off of them. And so she was finally with a responsible psychiatrist. And the responsible psychiatrist told her, you should learn to meditate because it'll help you get off of these. And I'll help. The psychiatrist said, he'll help, I'll help you too. The psychiatrist said that to her. And, but so he was gradually getting her off, but it was to get off of some of these benzos is sometimes worse than what made you get them on them in the first place.
Wow.
So she was having suicidal ideation. So fortunately, she had a good psychiatrist. I always make sure if somebody says that to me, I said, I'm not a doctor, I'm not a psychotherapist. Do you have somebody, and so forth. She did, but she contacted me on Christmas Eve. She was so desperate, and we talked about this, and she said, how soon can you teach me? Can you teach me right away? And I said, well, I can't teach it now. It's nighttime. Right now it's late, but I'll take an hour out of my Christmas tomorrow. And I taught her. And then and I taught her. And in 2 weeks, she hadn't gotten free from her anxiety, but she felt so much better after 2 weeks. She asked me if I could teach her husband, who was being bullied at work, and her daughter, who hadn't left the room. Her 22-year-old daughter had not left her bedroom except to go to the bathroom in 6 or 8 months.
Oh my gosh.
She was just in her room playing video games and would not leave. She's social anxiety extreme. And I taught both her husband and her daughter. And in 2 weeks after I taught her daughter was like driving. Jennifer texted me. She said, my daughter is driving herself to the mall to see what's going on.
Wow, fantastic. Wow, that's a huge success story. Without drugs, without dependence.
Right.
That's fantastic. And a lot of this is so available. That's what I'm hoping that people will understand. I'll put right now, I'm going to put your contact links here so that people can go to your website and look at your what you're offering, and then we're going to talk about the IONS conference coming up. But what I want people to know is that you can see Kelvin is very, very, very knowledgeable, but he's very available to you as a teacher. This isn't someone who's in judgment and you're going to feel awkward talking to, or that's going to make it even what you've already stressed out about, make that stress amplified.
Right.
This is really a way for you to have peace without having to use substances, which I think a lot of people, since everything's legal now, a lot of people are just doing that, which, that's okay, but that's not the most productive.
Yeah.
To do.
I mean, I don't judge people in terms of the choices they make. That's between them and themselves.
Right.
But if they want help in a natural way, they'll find me and I work with them, and and I help people regardless. Like you said, doesn't matter.
Well, it's their parasympathetic
yes.
System is off.
That's right.
So,
the missing link. I tell people this: look, if sleeping and dreaming were enough, nobody'd be stressed out. And everybody is. 8 billion people on the planet are various levels. Now, not everybody has high anxiety or not having panic attacks, but everybody has various levels of stress because dreaming and sleeping are insufficient. We need to learn how to turn on the parasympathetic, which is the medical term for the opposite of the fight or flight switch. There's an equally automatic opposite switch in the nervous system. That's the parasympathetic switch. And essentially, that's what I teach people how to do in a very easy, accessible way. It's not, there's no focusing of the mind, no clearing of the mind, none of that, no focusing on the breath, no controlling, none of that. And it's very easy. And because it's so easy, you don't have to do the technique very long. You don't have to meditate for half an hour, 2 hours, 10, 15 minutes each time, twice a day. That's all. And then in my students, their lives who are in acute situations, they just turn around. You know?
Isn't that fabulous? I think everyone should know how to do this. And I would think that anyone would be so lucky to be able to be in one of your classes. Now, on this thread, we've got video conference series. Could you mention that a little bit too?
Sure, yeah. So I also, in addition to teaching meditation, I help people with fear of death issues, and I help people learn more about what the afterlife is as well. And so I have an afterlife series that I teach, and it's a 6-part series, about 2 hours each. I try to keep it to 2 hours. Sometimes this last class, they wanted to keep going. I said, okay, let's save the questions for the next class, because I'll talk for an hour, and the Q&A will go for an hour, sometimes an hour and a half afterwards.
Wow.
So I talk about what it's like on the other side, and I talk about reincarnation, and I talk about, is there any punishment? What about karma and dharma? Where did those ideas come from?
Right.
And where does that fit into the mix? And what continues after we biologically die, and over the millennia, what continues, and so forth? And can we come back? And if we choose to come back, how can we come back? And what about soul plans? And so all of this. So that's a 6-part series every other weekend. And I'm doing it on a Saturday now. And if people are interested, they could still sign up and join. They could catch up by watching the recording. I do it live, just like this, on Zoom. And but I record it so people can watch the recording and catch up. My next session is going to be on reincarnation, and I'm going to go back about 6,000 years and talk about unfolded. So
wow, that's great. Okay, so I'll make sure that everyone gets the link so that they can. It is off of your website, so they could find out about that. But I mean, this is really interesting how you've used all of your. You started out with meditation. You still help people with that, and it's sort of a core part of your packaging. But then you've gone to the near-death experience. Your new book is Marcus Aurelius.
Yeah, and I'm talking my latest talk that I'm actually going to start doing, and I have started doing. I've done it a number of times already. Is some topics out of the book. This book is a collection of 67 essays that I've written about all different subjects, emotions, life principles. There's a chapter on meditation here, and the longest chapter is on the spiritual. And there's different topics: friendship, happiness, balance, ego, grieving, sex and spirituality, self-interest, attachment and illusion, destiny, free will, the meaning of life, and so forth. And so I talk about a lot of different topics, but I've created a talk on forgiveness and love and other confusing life issues. That's the title of my talk: Forgiveness and Love and Other Confusing Life Issues. And I'm giving that talk. I've already given it on Zoom a couple times, but I'm going to be traveling now that I've gotten vaccinated and all this other stuff. I'm traveling to, I'm giving that talk in New Hampshire, Boston, Massachusetts, Norwood, where I grew up in Massachusetts.
Oh, that's cool.
I'm speaking there, and New York City and New Jersey. That's one trip I'm doing in September, and then I'm going back to New Jersey and Pennsylvania in October. So I'm doing that and talking about my meditation as well. But that particular talk, forgiveness and love and other confusing life issues, some of the topics out of this new book.
Oh, that's great. That's great. Because so many of his sayings are so profound. I mean, I still am amazed. Well, when you look at Seneca, Plato,
Right.
Marcus Aurelius, it's like, have we really not evolved more than that?
Yeah, my first chapter here is my favorite my favorite Marcus Aurelius.
What is it?
Maxims. Well, no, I have about 12 or 15 of them.
Oh my gosh.
Yeah, and so I quote, well, it's a translation, obviously, but from one of the books that they call them Marcus Aurelius's Meditations. But he wrote them. These were self-reflective ideas for himself.
Right.
He wasn't writing a book. And in the same way, I say this in my introduction here, I wrote this book not thinking I was going to write this book. There's 67 essays, and they're just a collection. And somebody said, "Hey, you should put that together in a book." I said, "Oh, that's an idea." Anyway, but in the same way, he wrote those in the 2nd century. Those people who don't know who Marcus Aurelius was, he was a 2nd century Roman emperor. He was considered maybe the last of the quote unquote good emperors, they call it, the Pax Romana. But he was primarily a philosopher, and he viewed himself as a philosopher first and as an emperor second. I mean, he ruled about 20 to 25% of the world's population were under his rule as a Roman emperor. But I quote some of some of his maxims here, and then I have my comment about the maxims.
Oh, good. Okay, yeah, I can't wait to read that.
Yeah,
because I have to say, I mean, most of the things, the philosophy and the values of what is contained in most of his work is perfect for now. It really is amazing.
right. Yeah. And that's why I thought the timing of this book
perfect.
Yeah, I have a sequel to this book. Those people who've read this book are going, "Well, where's that one that you talk about?" This is like, and so I stuck this one in between because of what you just said. It just seemed like the timing for this in the COVID situation and so forth and so blah 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 blah. This is perfect because like Marcus Aurelius, I take a very practical view towards these concepts and how can we apply them in our daily lives.
Right.
And that's what, Marcus, as you know, was all about in terms of his philosophical views of life and so forth. Right. And so the second one's coming. I'm finishing this second.
Oh, good. Oh, good. Okay. So now, because we have about 7 minutes or so, I'd love to talk about the IONS conference. Yeah. There's a virtual online conference, which this year, this will be our 2nd year of having a virtual conference. There'll be 4 Zoom rooms. There's over 100 speakers. And this year we're doing 2 days before the conference, we're actually doing classes where people workshops. So one of the classes is a full day Reiki class, and then Kelvin's doing a class on the 2nd day. Do you want to talk a little bit about your class?
Sure. Yeah, I'm doing a workshop. It's going to be on Thursday, September 2nd at 11:30 Pacific time, where I am, which is 2:30 East Coast time in the U.S. And those of our friends in Europe can do the time zone math. But my workshop, my 2-hour workshop is going to be, the title of it is NDEs, which people know stands for near-death experiences.
Yes.
NDEs, opening us to past life experiences that enlighten our present and future. And so the reason I thought this was a good topic, and it obviously got accepted by the IONS committee, is that I was thinking, okay, so what do you do after you've had your NDE or your spiritually transformative experience in STE, whatever? Okay,
Yes.
now what? It's the now what question, right? I mean, understandably, I mean, I understand that those experiences may have been a major life-changing experience for
Right.
sure for
Right.
people who've had it.
Right.
But then where you go from there, and that's what I want to talk about in this workshop. We're going to explore that. We're going to go back and talk about some of my memories, but I want to explore it through the lens of self-knowing and
Beautiful.
what does reincarnation and so forth inform us in terms of who we are today. So again, we talked about this earlier in our discussion today. Continual present, living in the continual present. How does it help us in that way? So, you know, I mean, a lot of people who've had either a spiritually transformative experience or a near-death experience, it's a real genuine experience and it's life-changing for sure. But the problem that I have seen, you know, going to some of the, you know, I've spoken at the, as you know, I spoke at the
Yeah.
IANS conference in
Yes. Yes.
King of Prussia, Pennsylvania in 2019. I was opening night speaker there, and then again last year online.
Yeah.
But the problem is that when somebody has a major life-changing experience, it can sometimes be, how do I say this? It sometimes can lock them up,
Right.
can lock them up and limit them because everything is always about that experience. And I get it because I've had experiences, as you can know, but if we don't get locked up by them, who knows what other vistas of experiences one could open up. And so that's the perspective I'm taking in this workshop.
So do you feel that everything's in divine order and that these experiences are the gift, the next plateau that you may have actually set it up before you came into physical to have that near death experience and then use it to discover your past?
So so that's what you might be mean by divine order. Yeah.
Yeah.
It's like I call that, I use my language, I call this, is it is part of my soul plan or is it not part of my soul plan?
Right.
That's the way I use
Okay.
language I would use. But yeah, it could be and it might not be. It's like, so in other words, it could be part of my soul plan, what you just said, but it might not be. It could have been just because I happened to meet this girl at registration who I don't even know, and she was not part of the soul plan. And then I just happened to meet her and run into her and said, "Hey, you want to go swimming?" So I mean, that kind of stuff happens in life all the time too. But yes, we can set up a soul plan if we want to on the other side. And so some things can be sort of planned out. But the point is that there's always free will operating, whether it's my free will or other people's free will minds operating, that may affect even if I do have a soul plan.
Ah.
So we can't control everybody else's minds. That's what free will means.
But you learn to trust because you figured out a way to trust.
Well, that's a whole other issue. That's a good point. Well, so now that I've kind of navigated myself through paying attention to this stuff, we'll just call it stuff, for the last 50 years. And I trust, no, I do. I trust, like, I need to leave the house now because I don't know why, but I need to get going now. Okay, I can do the dishes later. That kind of stuff, you know?
Yeah.
And so I trust that because whether it's whether it's me tuning into traffic, me, when I say me, not the 8-inch plastic bucket part of me that's consciously, but this larger sense of me that maybe that's still part of me. Okay. Right. But I'm listening because that part of me is communicating with the conscious 8-inch plastic bucket part of me that's saying, you know, I could do the dishes or not do the dishes. Now, about just they got soapy and there's nobody's going to be crawling in there to eat stuff because, you know, no bugs or anything.
Yeah, don't worry about that.
I'm just going to worry about that later. It's going to be fine. I need to get going and get into the traffic and then get going. So that, to me, now there's that aspect of me tuning in to something that's not conscious, that's just informational. I call it the superhighway of information. Okay.
Perfect.
Right. Or am I tuning in? And sometimes I'm aware of this, and sometimes I'm not aware that somebody's whispering to me on the other side saying, "Hey, you really got to get going now," because, you know, so sometimes it's conscious entity, a mind, one of my friends on the other side that I have tons of, who's just going, Kelvin, or just me tapping in to some inanimate source of information, right?
Wow. Yeah, I'm, and we could talk. We'll have to do this again because we could talk a whole bunch. I do think that the release of stress and fear is a huge gift that you offer to people, and I hope from this conversation that they'll look you up. I'll put your website again is kelvinchin.org because he is a nonprofit, a foundation now. And then also the virtual conference.ions.org is September 1st through 5th this year. And it is our second year of doing this online. And it was very successful last year. So I know it'll be fantastic this year. And I'm so excited that you're going to be teaching. And it sounds like you're emceeing and you're helping out.
Yeah, that's right. I'm going to be. I forgot to mention that. Yeah, I'm going to be.
Yeah, no, well, you can see that Kelvin will keep it going and keep it fun. So, but the thing about the IONS conference, if you do get to go and you have trouble seeing every one of the 4 Zoom rooms are going at the same time, and it's always frustrating in the live conference that way also. But this year and last year, they let you have access with your ticket, which is only $74 right now for early bird. With your ticket, you have 90 days to rewatch everything. So, instead of watching Netflix, you can put good stuff in and really feed your soul, feed the part of you that really is going to help make the world a better place. And give yourself the gift of you, really. That's what it really comes down to, right?
Right. It's helping your world inside be a better place too.
Exactly. Because that's you.
That's where it starts.
Well, thank you so much, Kelvin. And I'll see you again at the conference, but can't wait till you come out here.
Yes.
Because that all got messed up, but you'll be in Colorado, I'm sure. And
yes.
And we'll get to play. And then there's also Salt Lake City in 2022. I'm sure I'll be there too.
Good to see you again, Kathy.
Thank you so much. Appreciate you very much.
You're very welcome.
Bye-bye.
Bye-bye.